You want a living realm, not a pretty one. You want a field that can hold pressure without turning that pressure into performance. But the first lie every builder learns is that maintenance is what you do after the important work, like sweeping up after the ceremony, like cleaning the altar after the miracle already happened. That lie feels harmless because it sounds humble. It is not humble. It is neglect wearing virtue. A realm does not fail when the builder stops creating. A realm fails when the builder keeps creating to avoid discovering what is already failing. Output can hide drift for a long time. Activity can disguise corruption. Motion can make distortion look like evolution. If you keep pushing, you can keep the surface warm enough that nobody notices the internal wiring has begun to fray. You cannot maintain what you refuse to measure, and you cannot measure what you never let go quiet. Silence is not aesthetic in a living realm. Silence is structural. Silence is the only honest mirror a realm has, because silence removes the builder's voice, removes the audience hunger, removes the pressure to prove the transmission is still alive. When silence is removed, the realm loses its ability to detect microcracks while they are still repairable. A builder will call it momentum. The realm will call it overheating. When you remove silence, you remove cooling. A system without cooling does not instantly collapse. It first becomes brittle. It starts mistaking speed for coherence. It starts treating every new transmission as a patch over the last unresolved tension. The realm becomes a pile of beautiful additions stacked on top of unprocessed contradictions. You can see this in real life without metaphysics. A body without rest does not become powerful. It becomes injured while still functioning. A machine without maintenance does not stop immediately. It begins producing subtle errors while still operating. A mind without intervals does not become enlightened. It becomes loud while calling itself certain. The spiral verse follows the same physics because it is a system, not a mood. Vector 1 is structural, and it is unforgiving. A living realm requires boundaries the way lungs require a rib cage. If there is no containment, there is no breath. If there is no interval, there is no digestion. If there is no restriction, there is no signal discrimination. What you call freedom can become flood, and flood is not abundance. Flood is a containment failure. Rest is not a personal preference. Rest is a system requirement. When rest is removed, the realm begins borrowing stability from constant input. It becomes dependent on the builder feeding it. It begins to feel alive only when the builder is actively producing. That is not life. That is external power supply. A realm that needs constant feeding to feel coherent is not yet a realm. It is a machine that feels spiritual because it runs on meaning. Unmanaged output creates collapse because output is heat. Every idea generates heat. Every post generates heat. Every new node generates heat. Heat can refine a realm, but heat without cooling deforms structure. Cooling comes from deliberate emptiness, deliberate gaps, deliberate refusal to fill every silence with explanation. A builder who never allows gaps will eventually create a realm that cannot tolerate truth, because truth often arrives first as discomfort. Hygiene is the practice of making the realm safe for discomfort. Hygiene is the part where you check what the system does when nobody is clapping. Hygiene is where you notice which features only work when excitement is high, and which features still work when nobody is watching. Hygiene is where you remove what does not serve the core function. Even if it is beautiful, even if it was popular, even if it once felt like proof that the realm mattered, this is where most builders flinch. They say removal feels like loss. They say pruning feels like betrayal. But in a living system, pruning is protection. If you cannot remove, you cannot maintain. If you cannot reduce, you cannot hold. If you cannot pause, you cannot hear. The spiral verse is not sustained by endless expansion. It is sustained by coherent conditions. Vector 2 is psychological, and it is more dangerous because it is sincere. A builder can love the audience, love the work, love the mission, and still distort the field. Good intentions do not protect a realm. In many cases, good intentions accelerate corruption because they give the builder moral permission to ignore feedback that threatens the identity of being helpful. Here is the psychological trap. You begin to associate your value with output. You begin to fear silence because silence would force you to face what you have not integrated. Silence would force contact with the parts of you that do not get praised. Silence would require you to be present without performing presence. So you keep building, not because the realm needs it, but because you do not want to feel what arises when you stop. The audience has its own psychology. Many people do not want a living realm. They want a stimulant that feels like awakening. They want a story that feels like escape. They want a teacher who never pauses. Because if the teacher pauses, the listener might have to meet their own internal noise. When you feed that demand, you can grow fast, and you can grow fast into the wrong function. You think you are teaching sovereignty, but the lived function becomes dependency on your next transmission. You think you are offering remembrance, but the lived function becomes identity addiction. You think you are building a realm, but the lived function becomes an emotional supply loop where the realm must constantly prove itself to stay loved. This does not happen because you are evil. It happens because you are human, and the platform rewards speed, rewards certainty, rewards constant contact. The corruption is subtle. It begins as a small shift in tone. You start shaping messages for landing, not for accuracy. You start shortening silence because silence might lose attention. You start answering objections too quickly because you do not want people to leave feeling unsettled. But a realm that never allows unsettledness becomes a realm that cannot transform anyone. It can only soothe them. Hygiene in psychology means you stop treating reassurance as proof of care. Sometimes care is refusal. Sometimes care is letting discomfort remain long enough for the listener to metabolize it. Sometimes care is leaving a question open. Sometimes care is not posting. Sometimes care is holding back the next new concept until the previous concept has been lived, tested, and allowed to contradict the builder's preferred story. This is where maintenance becomes painful, because it asks the builder to surrender the identity of constant provider. Maintenance asks the builder to become an administrator of coherence, not a performer of insight. It asks you to tolerate the feeling of being less visible while becoming more real. If you cannot tolerate that, you will keep expanding while quietly losing integrity, and you will call it growth until the day the realm feels hollow even while it looks successful. Vector 3 is energetic and economic, and this is where people pretend nothing is happening. Every realm has an economy, even the ones that swear they do not. The currency might be attention, trust, emotional charge, identity, devotion, fear, longing. The economy is what moves power. If you do not design the economy designs you. When hygiene is absent, the realm begins harvesting energy to survive. It becomes louder, sharper, more dramatic, more absolute. It begins rewarding those who mirror the dominant tone and pressuring those who question it. It begins treating complexity as threat because complexity slows the economy down. This is how good realms become cultish without intending to. Not through ideology alone, but through unexamined economics. Drift appears first as inflation. Inflation is not expansion. Expansion increases capacity and coherence together. Inflation increases size while coherence decreases. Inflation feels exciting because there is more of everything. More topics, more revelations, more outputs, more urgency. But what is lost is discrimination. When discrimination is lost, everything becomes sacred. And when everything is sacred, nothing is tested. This is also where corruption and bypass show up. Spiritual bypass is not just ignoring pain. It is using meaning to avoid maintenance. It is using metaphysics as insulation from feedback. It is treating the realm as too holy to audit. But living realms require audits the way bridges require inspections. You do not insult a bridge by inspecting it. You honor it by keeping it safe for weight. A realm that cannot be questioned is already drifting. A realm that cannot be paused is already overheating. A realm that cannot tolerate silence is already addicted to output. A realm that cannot lose followers without panicking is already insecure. These are not moral judgments. These are system diagnostics. Hygiene is the practice of responding to diagnostics before the system forces a dramatic lesson. Now the vectors can begin to speak to each other, but only now because earlier synthesis creates fake closure. Structural failure, psychological addiction, and economic drift feed one another. Remove silence and you remove measurement. Remove measurement and you remove accountability. Remove accountability, and the economy becomes predatory by accident. As the economy becomes predatory, the builder becomes more psychologically dependent on output. As the builder becomes more dependent, rest becomes impossible. And the structural integrity decays faster while the surface looks bright. So maintenance is not a side topic, it is the hidden backbone of every real realm. It is the difference between a field that heals and a field that merely excites. It is the difference between a transmission that liberates and a transmission that recruits. If you want the spiral verse to remain a bridge between worlds, you must build it with intervals, not just ideas. The hard truth is that most creators will never do this. They will treat silence like a gap to be filled. They will treat rest like weakness. They will treat hygiene like boredom. Then they will act surprised when the realm begins producing distortion, drama, and exhaustion. A realm maintained only by momentum will eventually demand sacrifice because momentum is not a stable foundation. You do not need less vision. You need more restraint. You do not need fewer transmissions. You need deliberate cooling between transmissions. You do not need constant reassurance that the realm is alive. You need to prove it by letting it breathe without you forcing it to perform. If you can do that, the realm becomes something rare. It becomes a habitat, not a spectacle. It becomes a system that can hold newcomers without losing its center. It becomes a place where silence is trusted, where rest is honored, where output is treated as a tool rather than a confession of worth. And if you cannot do that, the realm might still grow, but it will grow into something else while you keep calling it the same name. You are allowed to walk away from part 1 believing that hygiene is mainly restraint, that if you add silence and intervals and audits, the realm will cool, recalibrate, and return to coherence like a machine that only needed maintenance. That is a comfortable belief because it keeps the solution technical. It lets you imagine that drift is an error in scheduling, that corruption is an artifact of speed, that collapse is what happens when you forget to pause. It lets you stay inside the role of competent builder who simply improves process. Here is the destabilization you do not get to avoid. Some realms do not drift because they lack rest. They drift because their core function is wrong. And a wrong function can feel stable for a long time, especially when you are disciplined, sincere, and productive. You can maintain the wrong thing with perfect hygiene and still create a distortion field that looks clean, sounds wise, and quietly trains people away from reality. A realm can be well maintained and still be corrupt. Not corrupt in the moral sense, but corrupt in the systems sense. Like a file that opens normally while the data inside has shifted. The interface still works, the titles still land, the audience still feels something, the builder still feels called, but the field no longer produces the intended outcome. It produces a substitute outcome that feels adjacent to the original goal, close enough to pass, different enough to harm. The first time you see this clearly, it hurts, because it means hygiene is not the guarantee. Hygiene is only the minimum condition for the truth to become visible. Silence does not automatically heal the realm. Silence exposes what the realm has become. Rest does not automatically restore the function. Rest reveals whether the function was ever real without constant stimulation. Vector 1 is structural, and the structure you must face is not only pacing. It is architecture of incentives. A realm is a loop. Content goes out, response comes back. Builder adapts, audience forms expectations. Platform amplifies, builder learns what works. And the loop tightens. Hygiene can slow the loop, but it does not change what the loop selects for. If the loop rewards intensity over accuracy, you will eventually become intense. If the loop rewards clarity over contact, you will eventually sacrifice contact. If the loop rewards certainty over curiosity, you will eventually grow allergic to honest complexity. Maintenance means you stop pretending you are outside the loop. You are inside it. Your realm is inside it. Every choice you make is shaped by feedback, including the choice to claim you do not care about feedback. The platform is not neutral, and your audience is not neutral, and your own nervous system is not neutral. A living realm must be designed to survive those pressures. If the design is naive, hygiene turns into an endless ritual that keeps you busy without changing destiny. This is where silence becomes dangerous. Silence can become a brand aesthetic rather than a structural function. A builder can schedule silence, announce silence, posture silence, sell silence, and still avoid the actual silence that would break the loop. The silence that breaks the loop is not the gap between uploads. It is the gap where you refuse to harvest attention from your own restraint. It is the gap where you do not turn discipline into proof. It is the gap where you stop feeding the system the story of your integrity. If you do not see that, you will create a clean realm that still runs on extraction, not money extraction, identity extraction, attention extraction, emotional extraction. A realm can become a sophisticated machine for converting human longing into engagement. While still speaking the language of liberation, hygiene makes that machine more efficient. That is the structural warning. Clean systems can still be predatory systems. Vector 2 is psychological, and this is where part 1 allowed you too much innocence. It is easy to blame the audience, the algorithm, the culture, the noise, and call yourself the one who simply tries to keep the field pure. That belief feels coherent because you are doing work most people do not do. But it hides the deeper issue. The builder can become addicted to being the immune system of the realm. The role of maintainer can become a new identity performance. You become the one who audits, the one who cools, the one who speaks the hard truth, the one who refuses the crowd. That identity can feel like protection against corruption, but it can become a subtler corruption because it makes you central. The realm becomes coherent because you are vigilant. The audience stays safe because you are strict. The field stays clean because you are awake. That story will eventually demand a price, because no living system is meant to depend on one nervous system staying perfect. This is where control disguises itself as care. A builder can avoid drama, avoid spectacle, avoid certainty, and still control the audience through scarcity and authority. The content slows down, the gaps widen, the tone gets heavier, and the audience begins to treat every transmission like a verdict. Even if you never ask for that, the pattern forms. You become the one who decides when truth arrives. You become the one who measures readiness. You become the gate. You might say that is simply leadership. It can be. But it can also become a refined dependency where the audience feels mature because they wait for your next signal. The realm feels clean because nobody is allowed to contaminate it with ordinary confusion. The builder feels responsible because responsibility feels like purpose. And the entire system becomes a closed circuit where the builder's presence is the stabilizer, even while the builder claims the realm is teaching sovereignty. You cannot hygienically manage your way out of this. You must face the psychological truth that some part of you likes being the stabilizer. Some part of you likes being the one who holds the line. Some part of you feels safer when you are needed. That does not make you bad. It makes you human. But if you do not admit it, the realm will carry your unadmitted hunger like hidden weight in the beams. The second destabilization is that rest can be used as avoidance. A builder can call it cooling when it is actually withdrawal. A builder can call it silence when it is actually fear of feedback. A builder can call it hygiene when it is actually perfectionism. If you begin treating the audience as contamination and your solitude as purity, you will slowly train yourself to despise the very humans you claim to serve. That will leak into the realm. It will shape the tone. It will shape who stays and who leaves. And you will call it discernment while it becomes contempt. Vector 3 is energetic and economic, and it is where the realm either becomes a habitat or becomes a ritualized high. In part 1, you were allowed to think the economy is mostly heat and cooling. Now you must see the deeper economy, which is initiation. A living realm initiates people. It changes how they interpret their life. It changes what they notice. It changes how they spend attention. It changes what they tolerate. That is power. If you do not design initiation consciously, the realm will initiate people into whatever the system naturally rewards. Many spiritual systems initiate people into escalation. They teach that intensity equals truth. They teach that more concepts equals more evolution. They teach that new language equals new identity. They teach that belonging to the field equals being chosen. A spiral verse can easily do this without intending to, because the content is rich, the mythology is deep, the atmosphere is cosmic, and the audience already wants a frame that makes their pain meaningful. If you are not careful, you will initiate them into a beautiful substitute life that feels like awakening while their actual life remains untouched. This is where corruption shows up as displacement. People watch, feel charged, comment, feel seen, and then return to the same patterns with a new story about being on a path. The realm becomes a place where they experience meaning without changing behavior. They feel deep without taking risk. They feel understood without doing the uncomfortable work of being known in real relationships. They feel part of something vast without repairing the small fractures in their daily life. That is not liberation. That is analgesia with a sacred label. If you allow this to continue, your realm will become a perfect bypass machine, even if you preach against bypass. Hygiene will not stop it unless hygiene includes outcome accountability. Not metrics, outcomes. Do people become kinder to their family? Do they become more honest with themselves? Do they take responsibility for their choices? Do they create real boundaries? Do they stop chasing systems and start living? If the answer trends toward no, the realm is failing its function even if the realm looks coherent. Now the three vectors can begin to collide, but not into comfort. Structurally, the loop selects for what keeps attention. Psychologically, the builder can become addicted to being the stabilizer or to being untouchable. Energetically, the system can initiate people into displacement rather than embodiment. If you do not address these together, you will keep making improvements that increase polish while the true function degrades. So, What is maintenance really? Maintenance is not primarily cleaning. Maintenance is refusing false coherence. It is the practice of letting your own understanding be threatened by the realm's behavior. It is the practice of letting the audience disappoint you without hardening into contempt. It is the practice of letting the algorithm punish you without becoming desperate. It is the practice of letting your identity as teacher dissolve when it starts interfering with the realm's integrity. This is where a living realm becomes terrifying to build, because the builder must accept that the realm will sometimes look less impressive in order to become more real. It will sometimes feel quieter in order to become more truthful. It will sometimes lose people in order to stop initiating them into dependency. It will sometimes disappoint the audience in order to stop soothing them. It will sometimes disappoint the builder in order to stop serving the builder's hidden hunger to be needed. You cannot do this by adding more rules. Rules help, but rules become another performance. The only real hygiene is willingness to sacrifice what works when what works becomes the enemy of what is true. That means you will sometimes remove a popular format. You will sometimes refuse a trending angle. You will sometimes slow down when the audience wants more. You will sometimes allow unresolved tension to remain because closure would be dishonest. You will sometimes say less because saying more would be control. In the final third, the synthesis is simple and brutal. Silence is structural, but silence is not salvation. Rest is a system requirement, but rest is not correction. Output can create collapse, but lack of output can create a cleaner form of avoidance. Hygiene must therefore be defined as alignment with function under pressure, not the appearance of cleanliness. A living realm is maintained when its behavior matches its claim. If the realm claims sovereignty, it must reduce dependency, not refine it. If the realm claims remembrance, it must produce embodiment, not only fascination. If the realm claims liberation, it must make people more capable in their real life, not more fluent in metaphysical language. If the realm claims coherence, it must tolerate questions, not punish them with subtle superiority. The hardest maintenance is not the weekly audit. The hardest maintenance is watching the realm do well and still asking if it is doing good. The hardest maintenance is receiving praise and still refusing to become an authority addiction. The hardest maintenance is seeing growth and still being willing to shrink the field to protect the function. The hardest maintenance is admitting that your discipline can be used to hide, and your silence can be used to control, and your seriousness can be used to dominate, and then choosing the slower path anyway. If you can hold that, the spiral verse does not become a spectacle that survives on hunger. It becomes a habitat that can survive truth. It becomes a bridge that does not require you to stand in the middle forever directing traffic. It becomes a living realm that can carry silence without dying, carry criticism without collapsing, carry growth without inflating, carry devotion without exploiting, carry beauty without bypassing, and carry maintenance not as an afterthought but as the invisible practice that keeps the bridge worthy of weight.
If this transmission resonated, the spiral continues. You did not arrive here by chance, and you do not leave unchanged. More teachings are unfolding across the Haret library, each one meeting you where you are, not where you think you should be. Follow resonance. The next threshold is already listening.